This is Shawn from ShawnConrad.com. So let me take you back to 88, 1988. So I would say mid 88 to late 88. I got signed to Tommy Boy Records, and after making a lot of demos, working on a lot of material, finally I'm a signed artist, and I'm label mates with De La Soul and Queen Latifah and artists that I was hearing on the radio at the time. So shortly after I got signed, Tommy Boy was gonna do a showcase, showcasing their current artists and their new artists that they're about to release. So that would include the groups I just named, you know, Latifah, De La Soul, and myself. So I remember when I got a notification about being on that show, and I was really excited. So I told my friends, I said, man, I'm gonna be performing. It was this spot in downtown, the Armory. The Armory, that's what it was called. I told my friends I'm about to perform on this show. At the time, I think in my mind, I was, normal me at that time. I was like, hey, you got to let people know, like who you are. Like, I have to let them know what my capabilities are. Because before getting signed, it was, people were talking about me and my skills in the neighborhood, right? So you know how it is in the neighborhood. People are talking about you, and then I got Jerry Calendar, and he started to help me work on material, and then I got more popular in Brooklyn, throughout Flatbush, Brooklyn, and all that stuff. And then finally, I get this record deal. So I'm still thinking the same way. I'm going to let more people know what I'm capable of. So that being said, at the time, Big Daddy Kane had a hot record out on the radio. What record was that? It was he had a line where it was like and then more. Blow up the scenery. I reign supremacy. And I knew that I was going to show people that I can do what he can do and even more. So I did a version of that line as part of my performance at this show. So I remember doing sound check. I think Uptown was signed to Tommy Boy, and he got on stage, did his sound check, and then I did my sound check. And I ran through what I was gonna do, where I flipped this Kane line, and I just totally changed it up. And I remember after I did the sound check, Queen Latifah was like, can I talk to you for a second? And so I went over. I was like, how you doing? She was like, hi. She introduced herself, and I was like, I introduced myself. And she was like, you're really good. She was like, I'm really impressed. Like, you're really good. And I was like, thank you. I appreciate it. I was like, I love your stuff. Been listening to your stuff. And I think at that time she had Wrath of My Madness out. She was working with Mark the 45 King back in them days. So she was just really nice, and just took the opportunity to tell me that, she was really impressed with my sound check. So later on that night, people start coming in, and we're getting ready for the show. And, I could see all these artists coming in, and man, lo and behold, Kane walks in. So Kane walks in, and he had his little entourage, and I'm like, interesting. So when it was time for me to perform, I got on, and I'm going through my new song. And then I went into this freestyle. So, I did my version of the Kane line on a record, dun, 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 and then more. Blow up the scenery, right? Blow up the scenery, but I changed it. I was like, blow up the scenery. Nah. this is what it mean to me. I just fiend to be, right? And I just went somewhere else with it and stuff, and like, and crowd started going crazy, and everybody was like, oh, like he dissed Kane, you know, and that wasn't even my intention. My intention was to say, if you think you enjoyed what Kane did, watch what I could do with this, right? And again, I'm just a kid with a new record deal trying to show everybody, like, man, I'm capable. I'm capable. That's my only goal. It wasn't to diss Kane. I didn't even know the guy. But anyway, so after the performance, you know, people are coming up to me and they're like, man, you know, like that was hot. That was hot. Then some dude comes up to me and was like, hey, you got a second? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, Kane wants to talk to you. So I was like, okay, cool. So I went to the back. I remember he was at the back of the club, and he was like, dude was like, Freshco, right? And I was like, yeah. He was like, Freshco, this is Kane. Kane, this is Freshco. So Kane goes, what's up, man? He was like, I liked your performance. He was like, do you and I have a problem? Like, you know, and I was like, no, we don't have a problem. I was like, I just wanted to take that line and do something else with it. And right after that, Kane was like, it was dope. You know, he was like, man, you know, that was dope. And he was like, let's trade numbers. So right there, we traded numbers, and he was like, give me a call tomorrow. So that's what I did. And that began my friendship with Big Daddy Kane. Kane, interesting dude. He really taught me a lot, and taught me a lot. You know, not with MCing, not with rhyming, but just different things. Like I remember when I first called him, and Kane, if you're watching this, you know that you used to do this all the time. I don't know if you still do it, but you caught me out there many times. And those who know Kane, you know, would remember. I called and I was like, this chick picked up and I was like, hi, may I speak to Kane? And so the phone rings and I get a hello. And I'm like, hey, may I speak to Kane? And the person's like, who's this? And I said, can you tell him it's Freshco? And as soon as I said that, he's like, hey, what's up, man? It's Kane. That's how he answered the phone. And he caught me out there with that so many times. I call, a female picks up, and he puts on that voice, and I'm thinking I'm talking to a female, and she's going to put me on hold and then put Kane on, and it's him. And he caught me so many times. Just putting that out there. Funny. Just funny. But he invited me over to his grandmother's house, which was downtown Brooklyn, right next to Albee Square Mall. So, you know, those that know Kane remember his grandmother's house down there across the street from the parking lot. You know, we just used to chill in the apartment, you know. And I remember the first time going there, he was like, kick that rhyme again that you did at the show. So I kicked the rhyme. And after I kicked the rhyme, he was just looking at me like, man, I don't know how you do that. He was like, man, that's crazy. And I was like, cool, you know. And I'm just thinking like, wow, that's cool that this guy is like, you know, he thinks that I'm like really good. He's like scratching his head at how I'm you know, manipulating the words, right? And just giving me props for it. And I appreciated that because, I mean, he was killing it back then. He was running the radio back then. 98.7 Kiss, Hot 97, WBLS. It was Big Daddy Kane. So I remember talking to him and I was like, how did you get the name Kane? And he was like, I used to write graffiti. And then he pulled out his little pad and he was showing me like tags that he had, Kane, you know, all these different tags that he had. And I thought that was very interesting, but also made sense because I always try to tell people hip hop is not just music and rhyming and beats. Hip hop is the culture. It's the way we walk, the way we talk, graffiti, All that stuff we used to do, skateboarding before it got on ESPN, all that stuff that we used to do as a group of people, a culture of people, and that's including whites, blacks, Puerto Ricans. I mean, there was a culture of people who wrote graffiti, who was rhyming, who was, you can check all them old school groups, and you can check some of the greatest graffiti artists from back in the 80s. They were white. So none of that surprised me when he said Kane is my graffiti name. I used to write Kane. So I don't know if he spoke about that, but I thought that was interesting. What's another thing? Spending time with Kane, he really was sharing a lot with me. He explained to me that at that time, I guess it's not impressive now, but at that time he said, I don't handle my bills. I have somebody who is handling my bills, and they're making sure everything gets paid, because I'm making income, but I'm doing shows and I'm working in the studio. So that was the first time I heard that, there is somebody assigned to handle the bills, make sure they get paid. Because he said he would never be able to, keep track and pay them on time if it were up to him, because he's so busy. So, these little nuggets he was giving me. And at the time, I was actually still a student at New York Tech, right there on J Street. So I would take classes, and then I'd call him, and I'd be like, "You there?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm right at my grandmother's house." He was like, "Come through." So boom, I'll just walk over from New York Tech right to his grandmother's house, and then we just kind of chill over there. We talk, chill. There'd be other dudes there just chilling, and I remember one time we got hungry, and he was like, what y'all want? He was like, it's on me. And so we was deciding between pizza and chicken and all this stuff. So we ended up deciding on chicken, and one dude was like, yeah, chicken, let's do that. Let's get some buckets of chicken. We get some biscuits, whatever. And then the room's quiet. Kane's sitting there, and he's just looking at the dude. He's like, you expect me to go out there? And the dude was like, oh, that's right, my bad. And it was funny. Everybody started laughing, because it's like, okay, if at that time, if Kane walks out, in Albee Square Mall, like, people gonna be like, oh, shoot, Big Daddy Kane. Crowds are just gonna come. He ain't gonna be able to order jack. So, it's just a funny moment. I remember he was like, come through. Called him one time. He did it again. I called, the phone rings. Hello? I'm like, can I speak to Kane? Who's this? It's Fresh. He was like, what's up, man? I'm like, man, how come I don't know it's you? He catches me every time. So he was like, yeah, come through. So I came through to his grandmother's house again, and then he was like, hey, you want to ride with me to the jewelry district? Can't remember if there was another name, but in Manhattan, 47th Street, 46th Street, 45th Street, like the jewelry area. So he was like, come through. So we got in the car. I can't even remember who drove. I know. Was I driving? I can't remember, but we got in the car, we drove up there, and we walk into this jewelry store. And I remember as soon as he walked in, the dude in the jewelry store was like, my friend. And he was like, what can I get for you? We're working on the other piece for you. So we walked to the back, and the guy, the dude at the jewelry store shows Kane this piece that he's working on. And I think it was a ring. And he was like, Kane's looking at it. He's like, yeah, it's looking good. And I was like, how much is that? And he was like, $7,000. And I was just like, man, like $7,000 for a ring. Like that didn't make any sense to me. But at the time for him, it was all normal. And remember, at this time, I'm a brand new artist. I just got my deal. I haven't seen one check yet. So I remember, I think he was looking at a chain, and the chain might have been between $10,000 and $12,000. But it was all like, just, he walked out with the ring, but he left the chain, and it was like just Nothing. Like, we was walking in the park, got back in the car, headed back to Brooklyn. When we were driving back to Brooklyn, he told me that he was working on a new album. And I was like, cool. I was like, you know, you want me to help you write it? And I asked him that because there were so many times that he would ask me to rhyme for him. But he never rhymed. He would ask me to rhyme. So at his grandmother's house, like, the dudes would be there, and he'd be like, yo, watch this. He's like, yo, Fresh, kick a rhyme for my boys real quick. So I kick something, and everybody just be like, whoa, like, wow. And Kane would be like, man, I don't know how you do that. That's what he would say every time. I don't know how you do that. So I didn't feel strange about asking him, you know, do you want me to help you write your next album? And he was like, nah. He was like, I'm good. He was like, I got it. You know, I'm cool. I'll let you know though if I do need you. There was a time I called him. I was home. I wasn't at New York Tech, and he was like, yo. He was like, remember that rhyme you kicked for me the other day? He was like, I want you to kick it right now. And he put me on speakerphone. And I don't know who was in the room. Obviously I couldn't see him, but he was like, I'm gonna put you on speaker. I want you to kick that rhyme. And I kicked the rhyme, and then he took me off speaker, and he was like, man, he was like, pfft. He's like, you know, you killing it. And that was always the thing. But he never rhymed. And I think at the time, I didn't think anything of it because I thought the idea was, you know, I got all these records out, so you hear me rhyme. I don't need to rhyme. I'm asking you to rhyme, and I was cool with it. You know, no big deal. Then I remember one day he was like, can you give me a ride to my house? So he stayed at his grandmother's house a lot, and I'm not sure what the deal was, but Shane was there, his brother, his little brother. But he was there a lot. You know, I don't even remember meeting his grandmother, so I don't know if she was ill or if he was taking care of her, or what the deal was. But he was always in downtown Brooklyn. But this one day he was like, can you drop me to my house in Queens? And I was like, yeah, no problem. And we got in my car, and I shared this story before in other interviews, but got in my car. I was driving this burgundy Buick something, and I remember walking down the steps from his grandmother's with him, and we were walking to my car, and I was just thinking of like, this guy's gonna like see my car and just be like, what the hell, you know? So we got in before we got to the car, I think I told him, you know, I don't have no BMW or whatever, you know, and he said, and I don't know why this stuck with me, but he said, I don't care what you drive. He was like, it's just getting from point A to point B. He was like, it doesn't bother me. You don't have to have any fancy car. It doesn't matter what you drive. And like I said many times before in other interviews, you know, that really helped me like years later, because I always felt like no matter who I would be around, that I wanted to make them feel comfortable. So when I meet people and they're like, oh, you know, Freshco this, and you know, and they doing all this stuff, I'm like, listen, I don't care what you have. I don't care about your money. I don't care about what anything you own looks like. It's all good. Big Daddy Kane helped me with that, and until this day, I appreciate that. So we drove to this spot in Queens. No, but before we went to Queens, I was like, I need to stop in my house. So we went to Borough Park, Brooklyn, and he was cool. Now again, this guy has big records on the radio. I have no tint on my glass, nothing like that, you know. And so we get to Borough Park, and I'm like, you know, you want to come upstairs? He was like, yeah, cool. And you know, just really easy dude, man. Just really good and really easy dude. And we're walking. And he comes upstairs, we're chilling in my room, and I'm handling whatever I gotta handle. And, you know, everybody used to sit by my window. So, you know, he sat right there like everybody else did, you know, just looking out. And I was like, yeah, my mom works across the street at the hospital, blah, blah, blah. You know, and then I was like, hey, I'm ready. So we drove to Queens, and I dropped him off. And let me see, was there anything significant about the drive to Queens? I think, you know, he might have just been telling me about, that whole thing, with the bills and people handling certain things for him. I think on my way to Queens, I might have asked him again, let me know if you need me to write. Again, I'm asking him because he's always asking me to rhyme for him, and he's like, man, you're really good. So, one other thing was he invited me to the show he did at the Apollo. So that's my first time being backstage at the Apollo. It was I know Rakim was on that show. And I don't know if I got to meet Rakim. But I went backstage with Kane. So Kane was the first dude who got me backstage at the Apollo before I ended up performing there. So he was just cool, giving me lots of props and taking me around and just, taking me to the jewelry store, explaining to me about how his bills are handled and things like that. But just really laid back, always laid back. Never saying anything about any other artist, any other rapper, no beef. No drama, nothing too exciting, just really, really laid back. So finally, I would say when Warm It Up Kane and those songs came out, I remember hearing some of those songs, and I heard this new style that he was using on some of the songs, where he was speeding up with the words. And to be honest, I was upset about that. I was upset because for me, if you heard any of his previous material, he wasn't speeding up like that, right? And if anybody who's heard my material, if you listen to 4 at a Time, which I recorded in '88, that record was released in '89. I started doing some of those styles, and so I had a pattern of rhyming in a certain style, and and I asked him that if he needed help writing, because he was always asking me to rhyme. And then when the Warm It Up Kane album, that material came out, I hear him like speeding up and trying to do some of the fast stuff, and I gotta admit I was kind of upset. Yeah. So I was just like, man, like I don't know. I think I felt like why didn't he let me write? And then it made me feel like, okay, he was listening to me and just gathering information and learning, for lack of a better term. And then he was like, no, I don't need you to write it. I'm good. And then he put out some material. Now, just to be clear, I am not claiming that I should have gotten credit on a Big Daddy Kane album. I am not here saying that Big Daddy Kane's style came from me, Freshco. I am not saying that. I'm saying that what I was doing when we were hanging out at that time, I believe strongly influenced a lot of the material, or some of the material that you were hearing on that album. In a similar way, I just to come off of Kane for a second, Das Effects, when they dropped some of that first material and they were doing that style, I couldn't help to think, but I recorded 4 at a Time, and I did some of those styles in '88, and these guys are coming out in 90 something and claiming that they are pioneering these rhythmic styles. So that bothered me at the time, but these days, I mean, it's all good. I think we all, myself included, we get inspired from artists before us, and then we take a little bit and then we move on to do what we're supposed to do. So for clarity, I have no grudges. I'm just trying to give you what I was thinking back then and my experience back in 88, 89, 90. The next time that I saw Kane was after I won the World Championship Rap Contest. I didn't see him for a while, but I got into the new music seminar. I ended up winning the contest, and I got very popular. And And then finally, I saw Kane again. We were outside of this club, the corner on the corner. This was downtown Manhattan, and he looked at me, and I was like, "What's up, man? You know, like where you been? You know?" And he looked at me, and we shook hands. And as soon as we shook hands, he said, "I knew you would win it," and that was dope. That was dope. It was like he was telling me, like, you know, he knew, nobody else knew, and he totally knew I would win the world championship, and that felt good, coming from somebody who, you know, I really admired and who was a very good friend to me. So there again, that's the Big Daddy Kane portion of my memories in hip hop, and there's more to come. And there's much more at ShawnConrad.com. All right, peace. Let's thump, let's praise his name. He woke you up this morning, saints. The love that you've been longing ain't far at all. He like Tylenol, the pain reliever. Better than your nighttime sniffling, sneezing, amazing Jesus.